The hall of Riverrun was quiet, except for the distant crackle of torches. Robb Stark sat at the head of the long table, his eyes fixed on nothing, his mind swimming with the blood of the past years. Grey wind lay at his feet, restless, pacing, like he could taste the ghosts that haunted his master's thoughts. Every time Robb closed his eyes, he saw his father's head on a pike in King's Landing, the jeering crowd, and Joffrey's mocking grin. He remembered Sansa's tears, Arya, lost somewhere in the chaos, and his mother's silent grief, the Lannisters. Every misery in his life had their name tied to it. They had cut down his father, held his sisters hostage, and sent armies south and west to break the North's pride. Tywin, the architect of deceit, Cersei, the poisoner of crowns, Joffrey, a boy king drunk on cruelty. And even beyond them, every lion cub, every heir, every kin that carried that cursed golden hair was a threat to his house, to his line, to his very soul. It was that night, staring into the dark, that the thought first took shape. What if there were no Lannisters left to fight? What if the lion's bloodline was cut out at the root? Catelyn sat nearby, her hands clasped tight as if in prayer. She had watched her son grow from a boy chasing snow in Winterfell to the hardened king in the north, who had won every battle yet was no closer to winning the war. She saw the look in his eyes now, the one that reminded her too much of Ned in his last days, the quiet storm before a choice that would change everything. "You are restless," she said softly, breaking the silence. Robb did not look at her. His voice was low, almost a growl. "Restless men still dream, mother, but mine are not dreams. They are hunts. I see lions running, I see their blood staining the snow, and I see grey wind at their throats." Her lips tightened. "Revenge is a poison, Robb. It will not bring your father back, nor Sansa, nor... It will bring me peace." His voice thundered across the stone hall, startling even Grey Wind. He rose to his feet, fists clenched. "They took father's head. They jeered as if he were nothing. They keep Sansa in chains, treat her as a trophy. They burned the Riverlands, slaughtered our bannermen, and they will not stop until every wolf lies dead. I will not wait for their mercy, mother. I will end them, all of them." The silence that followed was colder than the winter wind. Catelyn looked at him not as a king, but as her son, a boy whose heart was bleeding too much for one life to carry. Yet she knew she could not turn him from this road, for the fire in his eyes was the fire of vengeance long denied. Word spread among his commanders in whispers. Robb Stark was no longer content with winning battles. He would win the war by erasing House Lannister itself. Not only Tywin and Joffrey, but Jaime, Cersei, Tommen, Myrcella, every lion, young or old. No heir left to reclaim the rock, no cub left to grow claws. The first to stand with him was Great Jon Umber. With his booming voice and mad laughter, he declared, "I pluck the lion's cubs from the den one by one, till the beast is naught. But bones..." Others followed with murmurs of approval, though some, like Rose Bolton, cold and calculating, watched with careful eyes, measuring what such a vow would mean for the balance of power. Robb planned in silence. He imagined sending riders into the Westerlands, harrying the roads, hunting kin both noble and forgotten. He saw himself in the Red Keep with a sword at Joffrey's throat. He dreamed of fire sweeping through Casterly, rock, its golden halls darkened with blood. That night he stood on the battlements of Riverrun, the moon casting long shadows. Grey Wind sat beside him, growling low, as if eager for the hunt. Robb stroked the wolf's fur and whispered, "They call me the young wolf, then let them learn a wolf does not stop when prey is wounded. A wolf kills the den, the cubs, the very legacy of its enemy." Far away in King's Landing, the Lannisters still schemed, blind to the storm sharpening its claws in the north. But soon, very soon, the young wolf would come not just for their armies, not just for their throne, but for their very blood. The morning sun had barely risen over River Run when Robb Stark called his council to order. The air in the great hall was thick with unease, the kind that came when men sensed the weight of a decision that could change the course of kingdoms. His bannermen assembled, voices murmuring until silence fell at the sight of their young king, standing tall, grey wind pacing like a shadow at his side. "We have fought battles," Robb began, his tone sharp and cutting through the murmurs, "and we have won them. Yet what has it brought us? The north still burns, the riverlands bleed, and the lions laugh from their golden halls. Every victory is hollow, while Tywin Lannister breeds new schemes, while Joffrey still sits his false throne, while Cersei poisons the realm with her lies." He let his gaze sweep across the men gathered. Greatjon Umber, eyes burning with fire. Rickard Karstark, brooding with grief for his slain sons. Rose Bolton, pale and silent, calculating behind his thin smile. Even Edmure Tully sat uneasy, aware that Robb's wrath might bring more blood than rivers could wash away. "I will not wait for them to strike again. We will not only fight their armies, we will destroy their house. I will hunt down every Lannister heir. No lion cub will live to grow claws against the wolf. When the realm speaks of House Lannister, they will speak of ashes and silence." A stunned silence followed. Some faces twisted in shock, others in grim approval. It was Greatjon who broke it, pounding his fist on the table so hard the cups rattled. "Aye, tear out their bloody hearts. The young wolf will be the scourge of lions." His booming laugh filled the hall, half mad with bloodlust. Rickard Karstark rose next, his voice thick with vengeance. "They murdered my sons at Jaime Lannister's hand. If you lead such a hunt, my sword is yours until the last lion cub chokes on his own blood." But not all were so eager. Edmure. Tully leaned forward, concern shadowing his face. "Robb, listen to reason. To speak of wiping out a house, it is a dangerous path. Even the cruelest kings do not stoop to—" "Cruel." Robb cut him off sharply. "What mercy did they show my father? What mercy do they show my sisters in King's Landing? Mercy is for the innocent, uncle. The Lannisters are guilty from root to branch." Rose Bolton finally stirred, his voice quiet but carrying across the chamber. "The work you speak of is no war of banners, my king. It is shadow work. Knives. In the dark, assassins, poison and fire. If we march openly to exterminate them, the whole realm will brand us butchers." His pale eyes glinted faintly. "If such a thing must be done, it must be done with care, quietly, thoroughly." Robb met his gaze without flinching. "Then it shall be done so. Quietly or loudly, it matters not. But it will be done. I will not leave a single lion standing to haunt the north." The council broke in a storm of argument, but the decision had been made. Robb Stark was no longer just a commander of armies. He had declared a hunt, and his prey was the blood of Casterly, Rock itself. That very night, orders went out. Small companies of chosen men, loyal wolves from the north and riverlands alike, were sent to scout the Westerlands, to track the movements of Lannister kin. Riders carried secret messages to sympathetic ears in King's Landing, men who hated the lion's grip but feared their claws. The first whispers of Robb's wrath reached even the capital. Servants spoke of northern coin being passed in alleyways, of men in wolf-sigil cloaks seen in taverns too close to the Red Keep. Some dismissed. It is rumour, but Cersei Lannister felt the prick of unease for the first time in months. She stood in her chambers overlooking the Blackwater, her golden hair catching the torchlight. "They call him the young wolf," she muttered bitterly to Jaime. "Now the pup thinks to bite at lions in their den. Let him try. He'll choke on his own teeth before he lays a hand on my children." But for all her bravado, she tightened the guard around Tommen and Myrcella. She doubled Joffrey's Kingsguard and set spies to sniff out every whisper of northern plots. Her paranoia only fed Robb's resolve. Meanwhile, Robb sat alone in his tent, a map of Westeros stretched before him. His hand hovered over Casterly. Rock over Lannisport, over the Red Keep. Names burned in his mind. Joffrey, Cersei, Tywin, Tommen, Myrcella, Kevan, even the lesser cousins who bore the Golden Lion. He whispered them like a prayer, not of worship, but of death. Grey wind stirred, growling low. Robb stroked the beast's fur and spoke softly, almost to himself. "We will bleed them, grey wind, one by one, till no lion is left to roar." In the shadows of Riverrun, a new war had begun. Not for thrones, not for banners, but for blood. The first strike came not on a battlefield, but in the hushed corridors of King's Landing. It was late evening when the Red Keep's kitchens grew restless. A new boy had been taken on as a scullion, thin and silent, with pale eyes that watched, more than they spoke. He washed pots and carried trays, keeping his head low, never daring to draw attention. But when the royal family gathered for supper, his eyes lingered a moment too long on Tommen Baratheon, the youngest of Cersei's brood, though no one with sense doubted his true sire. Tommen laughed innocently at some crude jest of Joffrey's, his cheeks still round with childhood. He was a gentle boy, fond of kittens and sweets, with no taste for cruelty. Yet in the eyes of the boy from the kitchens, one of Robb's chosen shadows, he was not a child. He was a cub, a lion cub. And the order had been clear, no lions left to grow. The poison was simple, colourless, tasteless, stirred into a sugared pastry meant for Tommen's plate. The boy placed it carefully before the serving girl, his hands steady, though his heart raced. Soon the Lannister line would bleed, starting with its most defenceless. But fate, cruel as ever, played its tricks. For in his arrogance, Joffrey reached across the table and snatched the pastry from Tommen's plate, declaring that the fat little fool didn't need it. He stuffed it into his own mouth with the grin of a tyrant in training, chewing noisily. Cersei laughed indulgently, Tommen pouted, and the boy in the kitchen froze in terror. A king had just swallowed a wolf's bite. Minutes passed. Joffrey raised his goblet, still smirking, but then his smirk faltered. His throat tightened, his breath caught. His face flushed red, then purple. The hall erupted in panic as he staggered, clawing at his throat, choking and retching foam. The goblet fell, shattering wine across the table. "My son!" Cersei screamed, rushing to him. Servants scrambled, lords shouted, but it was too late. The poison was quick, merciless. Before the eyes of the entire court, King Joffrey Baratheon collapsed in his mother's arms, dead with a twisted sneer frozen on his lips. Chaos tore through the Red Keep that night. Some blamed Tyrion, others whispered of Tyrell plots, but in the dark corners the truth spread. The young wolf's hand had struck the capital. The cub meant to be spared had been killed, but the effect was far greater. The lioness screamed and the kingdom shook. Cersei's grief burned into fury. She raged like a wounded beast, vowing death to anyone who dared plot against her house. "It was Stark," she shrieked to Jaime. "I know it. Who else would dare? He sends his wolves into my den." Jaime tried to steady her, but his golden hand trembled with unease. For once he did not doubt her. He knew Robb Stark's hatred ran deeper than rivers. And now he had tasted blood. Far from the capital, word reached Riverrun swiftly. Robb received the raven in silence, eyes fixed on the parchment as the words burned into him. Joffrey Baratheon, poisoned at feast. Suspicions abound. A hush settled over the tent. Greatjon Umber whooped with laughter, pounding the table. "The bastard pup's dead. The wolf's teeth found his throat." Rickard Karstark muttered darkly of vengeance repaid. Even Catelyn, though horrified, could not help but feel a grim satisfaction that the monster who mocked her husband's death now lay cold in his grave. But Robb did not smile. He only whispered, "It was meant for Tommen." Grey Wind growled low, sensing the storm in his master's heart. Robb turned to his men. "This was not how I planned it, but the gods chose otherwise. Joffrey's death will shake them, but it will also rouse them. Cersei will double her guards. Tywin will move like a wounded lion. This war is no longer about battles. It is about blood, and we will spill more. The young wolf's hunt had tasted its first victory, and though unintended, it had changed everything. Joffrey's death sent ripples across the realm. Lords whispered of omens, of the North's vengeance, of wolves prowling even in the heart of the capital. The Lannisters, once feared, now looked vulnerable, but Robb knew it was only the beginning. Tommen still lived. Myrcella lived across the sea in Dorne. Cersei's heart beat yet, venomous as ever, and Tywin, the true lion, still ruled from the shadows. His claws sunk deep into the throne. That night, Robb knelt by grey wind, stroking the great wolf's fur. His voice was quiet but resolute. One cub is down. The rest will follow, I swear it. I will bleed them dry till no lion's name darkens this world. Far away in the Red Keep, Cersei held Tommen close, weeping with rage and terror. In her heart, she swore the same vow, but against the wolf. The hunt had begun, and neither lion nor wolf would stop until the other was extinct. The death of Joffrey Baratheon turned the realm into a nest of vipers. While the capital reeled with panic and suspicion, Robb Stark saw opportunity. For years, the Lannisters had believed themselves untouchable, golden lions on high thrones. But now the crown prince lay rotting, and fear began to gnaw at their pride. Fear was the wolf's ally. Robb gathered his council in River Run's war room, maps spread wide across the table, tokens marking castles and roads. His voice was steady, cold with purpose. Joffrey was never the true prize, he said. Tommen remains, and he will. Wear the crown now. He is soft, but soft men are easily led. With Tywin and Cersei behind him, he is more dangerous than the boy who played at cruelty. Rickard Karstark spat. Then kill him too. Slaughter the rest of them, every cub, every kin. Robb's eyes hardened. We will. But this hunt is not as simple as cutting down soldiers on a field. The lions hide behind walls and crowns. To strike them, we must be shadows. Wolves in the dark. Roose Bolton, silent until then, leaned forward, his pale face unreadable. My lord is right. Tommen will be guarded like a dragon egg. Myrcella is far across the sea in Dorne. Kevan Lannister and his sons hold Casterly Rock. It will take patience. Subtlety. A knife does what armies cannot. The Greatjon bristled at the thought. Knives in the dark. That's not war, it's coward's work. It is survival, Roose countered smoothly. The lion is too strong in open ground. If you want extinction, my Lord King, then you must be willing to use every shadow and every poison. Robbie. Let the words hang in the air. His bannerman shifted uneasily, but he spoke with finality. So be it. We will use every means. This is no longer a war of honor. This is a war of vengeance. The North remembers, and the Lannisters will learn fear. Orders were sent out in secret. Trusted riders carried sealed letters to agents in the capital, promising gold and northern favor for information or for blood. A ship slipped quietly downriver under cover of night, carrying men sworn to Robb, bound for Sunspear with one grim task, the death of Myrcella Baratheon. It was a daring move and a dangerous one. Dorne had not forgotten its own grievances against the Lannisters, for Elia Martell and her murdered children still haunted their memory. Robb's men planned to exploit this wound, whispering poison into Dornish ears. Perhaps a knife would find Myrcella's throat not from a Northman, but from those who already longed for vengeance against Lannister pride. Meanwhile, whispers spread in the Westerlands. Cousins of the Rock, lesser Lannisters, with their golden hair and proud sigils, began to disappear. One was found drowned in a stream. Another vanished on the road between Lannisport and Casterly Rock, his guards slain and his body never recovered. None could prove it was Robb, but the rumors grew. The young wolf had set his teeth in the lion's den. At Casterly Rock, Kevan Lannister tightened the defences, posting guards on every gate, doubling the patrols. Yet even his stern discipline could not silence the fear in the halls. Servants whispered of wolves prowling unseen, of a northern curse carried on the wind. Mothers clutched their children closer, and every shadow seemed to hide an assassin's blade. In King's Landing, Tommen wept quietly at night, clutching his kittens for comfort, while Cersei prowled her chambers like a lioness gone mad. "They will not take another," she swore, holding Tommen close. "I will burn the north to the ground before I see my children stolen." But her rage made her reckless. She lashed out at the Tyrells, accused Tyrion, mistrusted Varys and Pycelle alike. The more she tightened her claws, the more the court crumbled beneath her. And all the while, Robb watched from Riverrun, hearing every raven's tale of panic and discord. He no longer looked like the boy who rode south to war. His eyes were cold steel, his words sharp as the sword at his side. Even his mother saw it, the slow hardening of a heart, consumed not by honor but by vengeance. That night Robb stood by the river, grey wind beside him, the moonlight silver on the water. He whispered the names again: Tommen, Myrcella, Cersei, Tywin, Kevan, cousins and kin alike. One by one they would fall, and when the last lion lay broken, the world would know the young wolf not just as a king, but as the scourge that bled House Lannister dry. The sea voyage to Dorne was long, but Robb Stark's hunters never faltered. They were 6 in number, sworn to the wolf with their lives. Among them was a man called Harren the Quiet, an old sellsword whose silence masked a talent for poison. With him rode Mage Mormont's bastard nephew, a boy with fierce northern eyes who longed for blood. They carried no banners, spoke no names, and bore false letters that named them merchants of the Reach. Their true cargo, however, was death. Myrcella Baratheon lived in the water gardens of Sunspear, a jewel of peace amid the harsh Dornish sands. Prince Doran Martell had taken her under his protection, treating her as one of his own. She spent her days playing in the fountains with his children, laughing beneath the orange trees, far from the poisonous intrigues of King's Landing. But whispers carried across deserts as swiftly as across rivers. The Martells remembered their dead Princess Elia, her babes butchered by Lannister steel. The sight of a golden-haired child playing in their gardens was a wound salted every day. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, had said once with venom in his voice, "The Lannisters may think her a guest, but to me she's a lion cub in my den." It was here that Robb's shadows struck their bargain. They found sympathizers among Dornish spearmen, men who had lost kin in Robert's rebellion and despised the lion's arrogance. Gold was offered, promises whispered of a north that would one day remember Dornish loyalty. But it was not gold that sealed it, it was vengeance. Harren the Quiet spoke only once, his gravel voice rasping like a grave opening. "Kill the cub, and the young wolf will remember your justice." The plan was simple, a poisoned pin slipped into Myrcella's hair as she played. Quick, quiet, without spectacle. She would fall like a child fainting from heat, and no one would trace it to the north. But Dornish politics were never simple. Word reached Oberyn Martell before the deed was done. The Red Viper confronted the Northerners in a shaded courtyard, his spear resting lightly in his hand, his smile sharp as a blade. "So the young wolf thinks he can use Dorne as his kennel," Oberyn drawled, circling them. "You come here with your poisons, your whispers, your northern oaths. Do you think us blind?" Harren the Quiet said nothing, but the boy beside him stepped forward, anger in his eyes. "We came to finish what your house should have begun. Do you not remember your sister? Do you not hate the lions as we do?" Oberyn's smile widened, though his eyes burned with fire. "Oh, I remember. I hate them with every drop of blood in me. But Dorne chooses its own vengeance, not at the leash of wolves." His spear flicked suddenly, faster than eyes could follow. When it stilled, its tip rested lightly against Harren's throat. "Leave Dorne," Oberyn said, voice silk over steel. If I ever see you again, your bones will feed the sands. Tell your Wolf King this. Myrcella is mine to decide, not his. The Northerners had no choice. They withdrew, bitter and humiliated, forced back to their ship with empty hands. Myrcella remained alive, laughing in the gardens, unaware of how near death had brushed her golden hair. When word reached River Run, Robb's fury shook him like a storm. He crushed the raven's message in his hand, his jaw clenched. "Oberyn Martell dares defy me?" he spat. "He shelters the lion's spawn while the North suffers?" Catelyn tried to calm him, reminding him that alliances mattered, that Dorne's hostility could undo his cause. But Robb's heart no longer bent to reason. "If the viper will not strike, then I will. If Myrcella lives, then she will return one day with children of her own, golden lions to haunt my kin. I swore no lion would live. I will not break that oath, not for Dorne, not for anyone." Rose Bolton's pale voice cut through the council. "Then perhaps, my king, it is time to consider subtler roads. If knives fail, perhaps fire. A ship burns swiftly in the night. A garden crumbles easily when its walls are poisoned." His lips curled faintly. "The viper may be clever, but even clever men bleed." Robb said nothing, but the fire in his eyes told his bannermen all they needed to know. Myrcella had escaped this time, but her reprieve would not last forever. The young wolf did not forgive, and so the hunt pressed on. In the Westerlands, more cousins vanished on lonely roads. In King's Landing, Tommen's guards doubled again, while Cersei drank herself half-mad with fear and fury. And in River Run, Robb Stark sharpened his blade, whispering names into the night as grey wind prowled like a shadow of death. The lions were cornered, but cornered beasts were dangerous. And even as Robb bared his fangs, the realm began to whisper, "What is left of the boy who once fought for honor?" The Red Keep had become a cage. Since Joffrey's death, Cersei's paranoia had grown into obsession. Tommen could not walk a corridor without a king's guard at each shoulder, nor sleep without guards at his door. Cersei demanded that every cup be tasted before he drank, every dish tested before he ate. Even the kittens he so adored were inspected by hand, as if a wolf might spring from their fur. But fear has a way of dulling vigilance. A fortress cannot guard against every shadow, every whisper, every trembling hand in the dark. And Robb Stark's wolves were relentless. A new scribe had entered the service of the court, a young man with soft words and steady ink. He carried ledgers, took notes for Pycelle, and spoke little. None gave him a second glance. By night, however, he wrote other names in a different ledger. Names of guards' rotations, of kitchens, of secret passages he discovered in the keep's bones. He was not just a scribe. He was Robb's eyes. Through him, a plan was set in motion. The boy king would die in his bed, smothered as he slept. It was Harren the Quiet's work again. He returned to King's Landing after the failure in Dorne, more grim than ever, slipping into the city as a beggar cloaked in rags. When the moon was high and the keep slumbered, he crept through the passages the scribe had mapped, his dagger blackened to swallow the light. He reached Tommen's chamber. 2 white-cloaked guards stood at the door. Harren waited, silent as stone, until a distraction drew them away. Coins scattered by the scribe in a distant hall, clattering like alarm bells. For a moment, the way was clear. Harren slipped inside. The boy king lay curled on his bed, soft-faced, breathing lightly. A kitten purred at his side, its small head nestled against his arm. Harren raised the dagger. His orders had been clear. No lion cub would grow to claw the wolf. But then Tommen stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He saw the shadow above him, the glint of steel, and his lips parted in a small, frightened gasp. No scream, just the wide, tear-bright eyes of a child who did not understand why death had come for him. Harren's hand trembled. For the first time in years, the old killer felt something like hesitation. This was no monster like Joffrey, no schemer like Cersei. This was only a boy. The hesitation lasted a heartbeat too long. The kitten yowled, leaping from the bed. A guard returned, heard the noise, and stormed inside. His sword flashed in the moonlight. Harren ducked, rolled, and fled through the passage, the dagger clattering against stone. He vanished into the shadows, but the attempt was laid bare. By dawn, the Red Keep seethed with fury. Cersei raged, her screams echoing down the halls, demanding heads on spikes. "The Starks!" she shrieked. "It is the Starks who send wolves to kill my son! I will burn the north to ash for this." Tommen clung to her skirts, trembling. He spoke little, but when he did, his words cut deeper than daggers. "Mother, why do they want me dead?" Cersei had no answer that would comfort him. Only fire and rage burned in her heart. In River Run, Robb received word of the failure with a face carved from stone. His men expected him to rage, to curse Harren's hesitation, but instead he only whispered, "Even the softest cub will grow claws. Tommen must die. If one shadow fails, I will send another and another until the work is done." Catelyn's heart broke as she heard him. "He is just a child, Robb," she pleaded. "This is not the way. This is not your father's way." "My father's way cost him his head," Robb snapped, his voice like a whip. "Mercy is weakness, and weakness is death. I swore there would be no lions left. I will not break my oath, mother, not even for a child." Roose Bolton's pale smile grew as he listened. "Then we must strike harder, my king. If Tommen lives behind walls, then bring the walls down. Fire and steel will do what daggers cannot." And so the hunt turned bloodier still. Plans were laid not just for quiet assassinations, but for fire in the streets, for riots stoked in the capital, for blood spilled until even the crown itself could not keep Tommen safe. Yet with every order Robb gave, with every name he whispered into the dark, a shadow grew over him. He had begun his war for justice, but now justice was drowned in blood. He was no longer the boy who rode to free his father. He was becoming something colder, something darker, the wolf that devoured until nothing remained. And in the west, at Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister watched the storm gather. Unlike his daughter, he did not rage blindly. He calculated, he planned, and in his cold golden heart, he swore the wolf would choke on lion's blood before this hunt was done. Tywin Lannister was not a man easily shaken. Joffrey's death had angered him. Tommen's near assassination enraged his daughter, but Tywin himself remained as cold and steady as stone. He had weathered rebellions before. He had crushed houses, razed castles, and rebuilt legacies from ashes. Yet even he could not ignore the truth whispered in his war council. The young wolf no longer fought battles. He waged extermination. In the golden halls of Casterly Rock, Tywin sat at a long table, while his bannermen spoke in anxious tones. Reports of cousins vanishing in the Westerlands came one after another. A nephew slain on the Gold Road, a second drowned near Case, a third poisoned in his own bed. The servants muttered of wolves with red teeth prowling unseen, and fear was spreading like wildfire. Kevan Lannister, ever loyal and pragmatic, pounded the table with a fist. "We cannot let this continue, brother. Every lion slain weakens our name. If the young wolf hunts our kin unchecked, there will be no Lannisters left to stand." Tywin's face was unreadable, his voice smooth and sharp. "Fear is what he wants. Let him think us prey. But a wolf that bites too boldly will find the lion's jaws waiting." He turned his pale eyes on the men gathered. "We will not cower. We will set a trap." And so plans were laid. Tywin knew Robb Stark was too proud to send only shadows. Eventually, he would want a decisive strike. Rumors were deliberately leaked. Whispers of a great gathering of Lannisters at Golden Tooth, of cousins summoned under Tywin's protection. In truth, it was bait. Dozens of soldiers were stationed in hidden ambush, crossbows ready, wildfire prepared to be loosed in the night. Back in River Run, the false whispers reached Robb's ears. His men urged caution, but the temptation was too great. A chance to butcher a clutch of lions in one place, to cut a swath through their bloodline. It was everything he craved. Rickard, Karstark pressed for boldness. "Strike them, Robb. They deserve no mercy. A feast of lions for the wolves." Catelyn pleaded the opposite. "It stinks of a trap, my son. Your father would have seen it." But Robb's eyes had grown hard, his heart colder with each failure to end Tommen, with each raven that reminded him Myrcella still lived. "Then let it be a trap," he said grimly. "If they wish to draw the wolf, they will learn the wolf. Does not fear cages. We will tear through them and leave none alive." The march was swift. A company of chosen men rode under cover of darkness, grey wind at their head, the beasts' growl carrying over the night air like doom itself. Robb rode with them, his sword already hungry for lion blood. When they reached Golden Tooth, they found the torches burning bright, a hall alive with music and laughter. Lannister colours waved in the wind. To his men, it seemed the whispers were true, a gathering of kin ripe for slaughter. The attack came sudden and fierce. Northern steel cut through guards, doors were battered open, and grey wind lunged with savage fury. But inside the great hall, no feasting cousins awaited. Instead, lines of crossbowmen stood behind overturned tables, strings taut. Barrels of wildfire lined the walls, their sickly green glow casting monstrous shadows. The trap had been sprung. Bolts rained down. Men screamed and fell, wolves and riders alike cut apart. Wildfire roared as torches were hurled, consuming the hall in emerald flame. The air turned to smoke and death. Robb fought like a man possessed, cutting down every foe that dared approach, grey wind tearing limbs from bodies. But the losses were heavy. His chosen company, his best men, were dying around him. For every Lannister slain, 3 wolves fell. Yet even in the chaos, Robb did not retreat. His eyes burned with madness, his sword dripped crimson, and his voice rang above the screams. "Kill them all! Leave no lion breathing!" When the dawn broke, the Golden Tooth was blackened ruin. Hundreds lay dead, both lion and wolf. Robb staggered from the smoke, grey wind at his side, blood painting his armor. He had survived the trap, and though Tywin's blow had cost him dearly, the young wolf still lived. Back at Casterly Rock, Tywin received word with icy calm. The bait had taken, the wolves had bled, but Robb Stark had not fallen. Instead, he had crawled from the ashes like a demon, his reputation only darker, more terrible. Keevan voiced what all feared. "Brother, he cannot be stopped. He kills without mercy. He hunts us like animals. If this continues, even the rock will not shield us." Tywin rose, his voice cold as the winter winds of the north. "Then it is time we remind the boy that lions are not prey. If he seeks to bleed us dry, we will bleed the north until nothing remains." And so the lion sharpened its claws. While the wolf pressed his hunt, Tywin prepared his own, a war not of survival, but of annihilation. The war between wolf and lion had grown into something darker than lords or crowns. It was no longer about thrones, nor banners, nor even justice. It was a blood feud, ancient in its savagery, and both houses bled freely upon the earth. Robbie Stark had changed. His men whispered of it when the campfires burned low, that their king no longer smiled, no longer laughed. His blue eyes, once bright with honor, had turned to steel. Grey wind never left his side, prowling with hackles raised, as if even the beast sensed his master was becoming something less man and more wolf. The survivors of Golden Tooth rode with him still, scarred and hollow-eyed. They followed not out of hope, but out of fear and vengeance. For their king no longer promised peace, nor freedom, nor the restoration of their lands. He promised only extinction for House Lannister, and that alone bound them to his banner. The final blow came in whispers, as so many had before. A raven brought word that Tywin Lannister had left Casterly Rock to march east, leaving the fortress in the care of Kevin and his sons. The rock, seat of the lions for 1,000 years, was vulnerable. Robb's council argued fiercely. Edmure begged caution. "The rock has never fallen, Robb. Even weakened, it will bleed you dry." But Robb's voice was ice. "Then let it bleed. I swore no lion would live. To end them, we must cut out their heart." And so, the young wolf rode west, his army, weary but relentless, his path carved in blood. At night, he whispered the names still on his list: Tommen, Myrcella, Cersei, Tywin, and his men feared those whispers more than battle cries. When they reached the shadow of Casterly Rock, the great fortress loomed over the sea, its golden banners snapping defiantly in the wind. But Robb felt no awe, no hesitation, only hunger. The siege was brutal, swift, and merciless. Siege towers rolled through smoke, ladders clawed at the walls, and grey wind led the charge like a demon loosed from hell. Arrows rained down, men screamed and burned, but the wolves did not falter. They had not come to besiege, they had come to butcher. Kevin Lannister fought bravely, his sword felling 3 men before a northern axe split his skull. His sons died, screaming, trampled beneath the chaos. The halls of Casterly Rock ran red, its golden tapestries torn and burned, its proud history drowned in slaughter. Robb himself stormed through the gates, cutting down guards with a fury that seemed endless. In the great hall, he planted the stark banner over the fallen lion, its direwolf snarling where the golden lion once roared. For the first time in 1,000 years, Casterly Rock had fallen, not to fire from above, not to treachery within, but to the unyielding vengeance of a wolf who refused to die. But victory came at a cost. His army was broken, bled to half its strength. The survivors were ghosts, their eyes empty, their hands red. They had won, but in winning they had become monsters. And the lions were not yet finished. For while Robb took the rock, Tywin Lannister struck in the north. He unleashed a campaign of terror, sending fire through Winterfell's ruins, slaughtering villages, burning harvests. Ravens told of children impaled on spikes, of entire clans put to the sword. If Robb hunted the blood of lions, Tywin hunted the very soul of wolves. When word reached him, Robb stood in the ashes of the rock, his sword still dripping, his heart hollow. He had killed the cousins, the nephews, the brothers. Kevin was dead, Casterly Rock was fallen, but Tommen lived still, guarded in King's Landing. Myrcella lived in Dorne, and Tywin, the true lion, still roared. His vow remained unfulfilled. Catelyn found him standing alone, grey wind at his side, staring at the sea. His armor was blackened with blood, his face gaunt, his eyes wild. She touched his arm, voice trembling. "Robb, look at what you've become. The boy I raised, the son I loved, he would not have done this." Robb turned, and his voice was a whisper, ragged and broken. "The boy you loved died when father's head fell. What remains is only the wolf." And so it ended not with peace nor with victory, but with 2 houses locked in a spiral of blood. Wolves and lions tearing each other apart, neither able to let go, neither willing to bend. The north remembered, the lions endured, and Westeros bled. In the histories they would call him the young wolf, the king in the north, the boy who won every battle but lost the war. But in the whispers of the common folk, he was something else. The scourge of lions, the wolf who bled House Lannister dry, and in doing so, bled himself of everything human. The war had no victor, only graves.